female lead and supporting characters in media being criticised for being either too meek, weak and pitiful, or being too strong has been par for the course in modern media. While female characters have existed since literature has, women have only recently been permitted to represent themselves in roles around 362 years ago. Women acting on stage was illegal in Britain up until 1661, and Marshall being the first woman to appear professionally on stage in Othello in 1670. This meant that even though women had been writing stage performances since the first female playwright, Roswitha of Gandersheim, a German nun living from 930/935 and dying sometime after 973, they weren't allowed to perform in those roles in public. In a similar vein, ancient Greek plays date back to 532 BC, but women were also not permitted to act in public. In Chinese Peking opera, yet again, roles of women were delegated to men. During the Ming Dynasty, 1368 to 1644, women were forbidden from appearing on stage. This notion was the catalyst to the Nan Dan, men who performed as women being expected to look, sound, and behave as a woman would, with some training for years to perfect their imitations. It wouldn't be until the Chinese Communist Party's takeover in 1949 that this practice began to fade and women took on female roles. Nan Dan is making a re-emergence within China in more recent years. It's a valid and impressive art form, yet it cannot be ignored that its roots lie in the exclusion of women. What characteristics of women were being shown to audiences in these roles? For centuries, the role of a woman in media can be seen as a damsel in distress in many cultures. Traditional folk and fairy tales and mythology often depict women as captured maidens hopelessly awaiting for a knight to save them. This isn't always true. Greek mythology sometimes depicts their goddesses as vengeful, powerful beings, a contrast to the weak and helpless maidens, but it isn't a good representation either. Take for example the Homeric hymn of Demeter, which depicts both of these stereotypes of women. It details the abduction of Persephone, wherein the young goddess of spring is taken to the underworld to be forcibly wed to Hades. Her mother Demeter wanders the earth looking for her daughter, neglecting the crops, allowing them to wither and die. This continues until a compromise is made that Persephone will spend time both with her mother above and with her husband Hades below. Greek mythology is, like many mythologies, misogynistic, yet the original tale is sympathetic to Demeter. It tells of how Persephone cried out for her mother and how her mother was heartbroken in return, only wanting her daughter back. In the original version, Persephone is a damsel in distress and Demeter is a concerned, loving mother, with connotations of being a vengeful goddess by allowing all the crops to die, but she has justification for doing so. Modern interpretations, on the other hand, switch the narrative, swapping the negative connotations from one woman to the other. The most popular example is Lore Olympus, wherein Hades and Persephone's relationship is consensual and Demeter is a possessive, overbearing mother. While the most known retelling of this twist, it is far from the first and only version of Persephone's abduction to take this angle on the myth. When considering the story more deeply, it only evolves the damsel in distress tale into one of a woman using her own agency by demonizing another woman. While I enjoy the webcomic on a surface level, I'd recommend this video by Too Many Crowns that goes into greater detail about the issues with Lore Olympus in this regard, and problems with the series as a whole. The oldest fairy tale is believed to be Rumpelstiltskin, a tale wherein a woman is indebted to a small devil-like creature after he saves her from being punished for not being able to weave straw into gold like her father claimed to the king she could. Some experts believe this tale can be observed in archaeological evidence that dates back to the Bronze Age, making the story over 6,000 years old. Other stories, such as Beauty and the Beast, are also believed to have origins as old as thousands of years ago. Many of these stories involving women captured and waiting for a hero. Brothers Grimm, Jacob and Wilhelm are likely the most well-known compilers of fairy tales, publishing many works in their time, 1787 to 1863 and 1786 to 1859 respectively. Their tales include, but aren't limited to, Rapunzel, trapped in a tower, Cinderella, only escapes her evil family by marrying, and Sleeping Beauty, needs a prince to kiss her to wake her from a curse. The characterization of women as damsels in distress derive from traditional gender roles. On bioevolutionary levels, humans evolved gender roles before speech existed. These were based on sex and hinged on human survival, with the typically stronger males hunting and females having more limited roles due to being of the sex that underwent pregnancy, which takes a significant amount of time out of being able to work themselves, instead designated to caregiver and homemaker roles. This, of course, was primitive, based solely on the instinctive need to procreate and sustain themselves. As humans evolved and grew more conscious of existence and their place within the world, ideas of what a person is and can be based on sex changed. Females in truly free countries aren't bound by biological determinism. Having a uterus doesn't condemn one to a life of childbearing and homemaking. In the same regard, men for the most part no longer don a spear and hunt animals as a means to survive. As humans gained cognitive thought, concepts such as philosophy, ethics, and economics emerged. This cropped up throughout history in different cultures as the course of time persisted. Women have been seen in military roles. Celtic women in what is now known as Britain documented from at least 61 CE, the time of Boudicca and her rebellion against the Romans, held warrior positions. Evidence of female Viking fighters can be observed as far back as the 10th century. Around the Jin dynasty China, a 13-year-old Xun Guan led an assault retaliating against forces sieging her family's castle. Early expectations of women deriving from traditional gender roles, which in turn originate from primitive survival needs, may be the culprit for placing women's positions in stories as weak, helpless damsels in need of rescue. Yet, as the role of a woman developed, so did stories about them. The legendary ballad of Hua Mulan spins the tale of a young woman of the northern and southern dynasties era who assumes the identity of a man to save her aging father from being conscripted into the military. This is contrasted with the Mulan we read about at the beginning of the story. She sits at a loom, a device used to weave cloth and tapestry, which was a typical female activity for her time period. While the story is not indicative of a society that sees a woman being as capable as a man in certain fields, being that Mulan must disguise herself as a man to enter the army, it does speak of the ability a woman has to be as capable as a man. Modern women are more than their gender roles. They have agency, can choose to have children, and can enter the same workspaces as men, including military roles traditionally occupied by men. This too is reflected in media, with more female protagonists telling female-centered stories than any other point in history. Yet, some creators have somewhat overcompensated with their female characters. After being starved of strong, independent, capable female-written and/or acted leads for literal centuries, an emergence of unrelatable and unrealistic female characters has taken place. The most obvious of this is the Mary Sue trope. Mary Sue is the type of female character who is depicted as unrealistically lacking in flaws or weaknesses. The term was first coined in fanfiction. These characters are often observed to be perfect in any way possible, conventionally attractive with numerous love interests, admired and loved by most, if not all, high intelligence and wit. These characters are rarely ever wrong in any scenario they're placed in. They are the most unique character to exist within their universe. More often than not, the Mary Sue moves the plot along herself with her own actions and choices, rather than a plot naturally flowing and her reactions to the plot. She serves as the pinnacle of the story and everything always goes her way. I can think of no better character that encapsulates the Mary Sue than the 13th Doctor of Doctor Who. Many of her traits may also be attributed to her previous male counterparts, being admired, always right, incredibly smart, and I'm not dismissing the fact that she shares many of her traits with her male counterparts. The sheer difference is that this doctor almost never receives consequences for decisions that are objectively bad. I recommend Yanxi's video on 13 for a greater insight into this topic. But let us observe some examples in which 13 is considered to be the moral standard in comparison to her male predecessors. The 10th Doctor is arguably the darkest portrayal of the Doctor. While also admired and trusted by his companions, he's no doubt flawed. In one episode, he allows his hatred of the Dalek race to overtake him as he literally tortures a Dalek, and his companion Rose confronts him regarding this, urging him to see reason. The Doctor here was not perfect and not right in what he did, and his friend took him to task on that. In contrast, a moral dilemma is raised in an episode of 13's wherein she must choose to kill a dangerous creature. This isn't the aspect I take issue with. One option is to kill the beast using a gun, but she says no. She instead elects to lock it away and allow it to starve to death or die naturally, as she puts it. The narrative frames this as the ultimately correct moral choice because guns are bad. In reality, she made an awful decision. She could have ended the creature's life quickly and relatively painlessly. Instead, she chooses to let it die a slow, painful death. Yet her companions praise her actions as being the most correct. Everything in the story it's framing tells the audience that this is the right choice. A similar scenario occurs when she has to eliminate an alien threat. Instead of killing the alien, she uses technology to freeze it in containment. The being will remain frozen, conscious, aware, but be unable to move or speak. Both of these scenarios challenge the notion of killing, condemning it as an evil choice, yet both use alternatives that are inherently worse. Starving a creature to death and prolonging its pain, and forcing a creature to be imprisoned as a sentient statue for all time should not be the best option. 10 commits a similar act in his series, placing members of a family who are hunting him down in several prisons. The father is locked in unbreakable chains, the mother thrown into a collapsing star to be imprisoned in another galaxy for all eternity, the daughter trapped in every mirror in existence, and the son suspended in time and left as a scarecrow. 10 is not self-congratulatory regarding his actions, nor does the narrative treat them as a good thing. It's one of the darker moments we see from 10 throughout his series, a judgment and a punishment, not a mercy. These punishments are similar to that of the Alien 13 frozen time, but in her case she's seen as merciful, whereas 10 is seen as vengeful. Of course, there are many more parallels between 13 and her previous male counterparts, but I won't delve into that too much more. The crux is that 13 is treated wholeheartedly as the moral superior in all regards, her companions treating her as the best thing since sliced bread because she's the smartest, most correct person in the universe. Other iterations don't shy away from showing darker sides to the Doctor, and friends of his taking issue with certain actions he makes. Another Mary Sue trope 13 falls victim to is the lack of growth in her character. Because she often moves the plot along with her decisions, making her the reason a story concludes the way it does rather than her having to either be content with or grapple with how events play out, she's rarely forced to sit back and reflect. This makes her both the most important aspect of the story, rather than a cog in its wheel in regards to choosing its end, as well as being the reason it ends the way it does, and she never has to change due to this. A more popular example of a Mary Sue often cited is Twilight's Bella Swan, whom depicts another aspect of Mary Sue's, being a self-insert of the author to vicariously play out their own fantasies. Bella has very few flaws, the only notable one being clumsy. Edward and Jacob fall for her pretty quickly, as well as other male characters such as Mike, Tyler, and Eric. She's desired and fought over by men despite her being described as plain and not a typical girly girl, evoking the special characteristic of a Mary Sue. Bella is also extra unique because she is immune to vampire powers such as mind reading for no discernible reason. Later this is revealed because, even as a human, she's born with the power of having a shield that protects her from the effects of powers. Powers that are wielded by literal supernatural beings much stronger than herself. Bella never really grows or changes as a person because the plot never requires her to, which is similar to 13. Men fight because of Bella. The Volturi want Bella because she's super special and later want her child because she's somehow able to conceive a baby as a human with a vampire. She is the catalyst for most events within the plot. Another modern trope that is relevant is that of the not like the other girls girl. Girls who oppose stereotypical female stereotypes by displaying a despise for these concepts that are normally shown to be feminine. Bella also fits into this type of character. However, I already have a video on this trope in particular, which I'll link below alongside other videos on the phenomenon, if you'd like a better understanding of it. For the sake of brevity, it places the female character as being superior by defying many stereotypes about women, for example, not liking makeup or shopping, in order to separate themselves from other girls. This may have also been created as a response to the Damsel in Distress trope in a misguided attempt to create strong female characters, but as I explain in my other video, this often falls flat. What I want to discuss in this video now are female characters written right, ones that are neither weak damsels that depend on others for rescue, super special Mary Sues who are the pinnacle of the plot, or irritating, not like the other girls. The first is Ygritte from A Song of Ice and Fire. She initially may come across as a Mary Sue as she's a strong fighter, often equally as capable as her male counterparts, or a not like the other girls girl, due to her having little to no interest in things other female characters in the show enjoy, or not expressing similar behaviours they do. However, these aspects of Ygritte do not indicate a Mary Sue or not like the other girls girl alone. What makes these tropes are that they are designed to elevate the female character above other characters, the latter trope elevating them above other female characters specifically. There are contextual elements to Ygritte that allow for these to be realistic character traits. She's a free folk, living outside the wall in harsh, icy landscapes beyond. For her to survive, it's imperative for her to be able to fight, track and hunt. If she weren't good at fighting, she wouldn't be alive, adding in the extra context that free folk are preparing for an assault on the wall. For her to be considered part of their forces, she must be a proven warrior. And she isn't alone. In free folk culture, it's normal for women to partake in hunting and raids, meaning for Ygritte to be part of the story, her character had to have certain traits to qualify. She doesn't dictate the plot. Her qualities she earned must be part of her for her to participate in the plot. This is also another element I neglected to mention in the Mary Sue section, but in many Mary Sues, many things are given to a character unwarranted. Whether it's material goods, relationship prospects or powers, many never earn or work what is given to them. In Ygritte's case, she was likely trained how to fight as early as she could for the best chance at life. As an extension of this, she isn't accustomed to the life many other female characters we see are given, as many of them are noble ladies born into high-ranking families. She doesn't have the luxury of being interested in clothes and social gatherings, as life for her is simply making it to the next day. It isn't that she would hate or look down on them if she knew them. Their lifestyle would likely confuse her more than anything, not because they're busying themselves with feminine activities, but because they aren't having to do the same things she and other free folk have to do for them to survive every day. There's a particularly interesting conversation she has with Jon Snow. What's fainting? When a girl sees blood and collapses. Why would a girl see blood and collapse? Well, not all girls are like you. Well, girls see more blood than boys. Here, she doesn't revel in the knowledge she is unique to other women. She's simply baffled at the idea that a woman would faint at the sight of blood, also subtextually jesting at Jon for not knowing much about women and their experiences. Her experiences aren't male nor female, as both groups participate in what she does, and the narrative doesn't seek to highlight her as better than other women because of those experiences. If anything, she makes jokes about the class of those people doing those things. It's weird to her that people would dress up in fine clothes and go to banquets because it's not something that she ever had to do. She makes fun of them based on their social class and not because of their gender. She looks down on characters of a higher class because she sees their lifestyle as being frivolous and pointless in the long run. Not because she's a woman that thinks she's better than other women. Ygritte also displays flaws that make her questionable to the audience not seen in Mary Sue's. She's not a hero, she's a person simply trying to live. She doesn't take issue with raiding innocent villagers, killing and stealing from them. This is partly due to her allies her people have made with those who do enjoy tormenting the villagers, and is somewhat obligated to participate, not challenging the choice. Here is an example of her being driven by the plot rather than her driving it. She also allows her emotions to cloud her judgment as she allows Jon to go free, knowing that this could endanger the Free Folk's plan to assault the wall and secure their safety on the other side. While the assault is a threat to our protagonist Jon, and the audience would root for his victory, Ygritte knows that the success would ensure the lives of her people, men, women and children currently at risk of being killed by the White Walkers and the Night King. In both instances, Ygritte is taking morally questionable actions fueled by a need for survival and by the love she has for Jon. While physically strong, she's allowed to be a complex character stuck between two sides of a conflict, and we see her having to grapple with the stress of it. She's permitted to be a multifaceted character, a woman, a warrior, someone willing to kill innocents to help her people, while also being at odds with her emotions. Another female character I want to talk about is Yingluo of Story of Yanxi Palace. She enters the Forbidden Palace as a maid to uncover the secret behind her sister's death, and eventually works her way up the hierarchy. Right off the bat, she diverts from the Mary Sue trope. She's described by other characters as plain and having the face of a fox, meaning she looks deceptive and cunning. In contrast to Ygritte, she isn't physically strong but is incredibly smart and quick thinking. Due to the nature of her mission in the palace, she does drive some of the narrative, being that she's investigating her sister's death. However, what's most fascinating and enjoyable about her is how she manages to respond to obstacles. On one occasion, a fellow jealous maid steals her embroidery work when the two were competing for the chance for their work to be made into a robe for the emperor. The maid switches her work for Yingluo's and wins the contest with the stolen design. However, Yingluo predicted this and left a pin in her work, meaning that when the emperor puts on the robe, he's pricked. The jealous maid is punished for harming the emperor, sent to hard labour, and Yingluo is rid of one obstacle. In this instance, it demonstrates Yingluo's abilities to observe others and their behaviour and use it to predict their moves, using it against them. Another time, Yingluo is angry and begins to punch a nearby tree. However, she's unaware the tree is considered sacred, those in the palace believing it houses a spirit, and the emperor passes by, catching her in the act. She immediately kowtows so low so we can't see her face, and when asked as to why she was defiling the tree, she makes up a lie. She says she had a dream where the tree told her it had an itch and was begging for her to scratch its back, and that's what she was doing. This case shows her ability to think quickly. She bowed down so low, not only out of respect for the emperor, but also so the emperor couldn't see her face and identify her. As well as this, she was able to come up with an excuse as to what she was doing with the tree. Not only are these great examples of her being a capable thinker, these are also examples of her reacting to the plot. The maid was a rival for Yingluo and was causing complications to her investigation into her sister's death, and she reacted by using her intelligence to outwit her. The emperor was also a risk, being able to expel her from the palace or worse, and her skill to come up with ideas fast helped her deal with this part of the story. Unlike Ygritte, Yingluo is also not afraid to get her hands dirty. Throughout her time, she isn't afraid to have others punished to get her way. Due to her schemes, she has an aunt expelled from the palace, a maid sent to hard labour, and another forced to eat glutinous rice balls until she's sick. The audience will still root for her as many of these people have wronged her or are obstacles in her plans, yet the narrative doesn't frame this as necessarily good acts all the time. Yingluo is explicitly vengeful, yet the cruel, unforgiving nature of the palace allows for this context. She has to be ruthless to survive there. On the other hand, she's also able to develop as a character throughout the series. Initially a cold, almost selfish person, Yingluo grows to become more open and loving, creating friendships with those such as Mingyu, and deeply caring for Empress Fuka. Even after her first goal is met and she discovers the truth, she remains in the palace due to the other plot points affecting those she cares for. Events in which Episode 1 Yingluo would never even consider getting involved in. While of course she still experiences other obstacles and challenges herself, the merciless energy she used to reach her original goal is now also channeled into assisting her friends and allies. Yingluo too must also work hard for what she earns. Born to the Han group when the Manchu were in rule, she's not only part of a lower ethnic class but also a lower economic class. She enters the palace a maid, and by the end of the series she's imperial noble consort. Using her trickery and schemes, she's able to rise through the ranks. Hers is a Cinderella story, but she did not instantaneously reach power by simply marrying the emperor. Yingluo had to work meticulously to remain safe and within the palace simply as a maid to accomplish her original objective. However, it can be argued that her rise to imperial noble consort can be attributed mostly to the emperor taking a liking to her without her influence or desire for that position. However, when other events take place during the story, she definitely wanted the position in order to avenge Empress Fuka. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it to be informative. Comment down below, what are some of your favourite female characters? I am interested in characters that are multifaceted, female characters specifically that are strong but not overpowered, and are allowed to have human emotions. I feel a lot of the time it gets confused. We are either allowed to have a completely weak character with absolutely no motivations or drive or ability themselves, or a robotic one that is completely a badass with absolutely no nuance. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!